It's awkward, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's awkward just talking to a camera. There's no one over there. Just do what feels natural.
All natural.
Just do what feels natural to film an opening. Stop it.
I'm just gonna smile and look pretty.
Okay. Hey guys, welcome back. So we are here to film the husband Q&A that you guys asked for, and so I'm going to look at the questions we have on Instagram and the questions we have on the last YouTube video that I did about adoption, and my lovely husband is going to answer those questions for you as best as he can. So we are just going to jump right into the questions. All right, so the first question is from Instagram, and it is, what, if any, was your biggest hesitation in adopting?
Ooh. Financially. That was the biggest one for me. I think.
Money.
Yeah, money. I mean, my natural role, the provider for our household, that's kind of the first place my mind went was, how are we going to afford this?
The second part of the question was, how did you conquer that fear?
Well, I mean, it's...
We trusted that God was going to provide, and He did. He provided for all three of our adoptions.
Yes, we saw miracles unfold, especially with Jonah. I mean, watching within what happened within the span of 24 hours. I mean, we've seen what can take place, but that doesn't remove the hesitation before entering into it. I want to make that pretty clear as well. I mean, it's something that...
It's totally normal.
It is. It is. And
to be fearful of the money piece of it. And also we've prioritized in changing things in our budget and stuff like that. So another comment about how they wish they could get their husband on board, but they think the financial aspects that come along with growing your family through adoption, their husband's not comfortable with that. Another question, how do you handle the financial aspects of adoption?
So it's a big one. So I think another thing to add into it too is there are several resources, right? Barring what type of adoption you do, there's grants, there's certain types of aid that can be provided. Fundraising, huge for us.
You can do fun. And I want to mention, because not everyone is comfortable with fundraising, and that is totally okay. It is a personal decision if you feel okay doing fundraisers. But I feel like it needs to be said too that we have taken out loans for our adoptions before.
Yes.
We have not paid cash for every adoption. We've had to go into debt on a different number of occasions. However, we've always been able to pay it back. There's the adoption tax credit that gives you tax benefits, as well as, I guess, our thought on it, and I think we've both agreed on this, is that, you know, people are willing to go into debt for cars and even vacations and, you know, silly, frivolous things in life people will go into debt for. And so, while we don't love debt,
it's a worthy cause.
It's definitely worth it to us. And we're not, you know, swimming in adoption debt by any means. You know, we have some
lifestyle changes as well, something to consider. I mean, before Noah came home, getting rid of satellite TV, cutting back on cell phone plans, right? Little things that you
make room in your budget.
Right. You find a way to make it work, and then over the course of time, you realize how much you don't really need them.
Right. And you get creative too. I mean, my photography business helped fund our first 2 adoptions, and I did some fundraiser photo shoots for Rosie's adoption too. So get creative. If you have a talent or something that you are good at that you can, you know, use that to help provide for your adoption, make something, sell it on Etsy, that kind of thing. So there's lots of different ways to get creative about the finances, and I hate that is the number one thing that stops people, I feel like, is finances, because it is scary. We should also mention, because it's important to note, that if you want to adopt but you do not want to have to really pay anything, then contact your local DSS office, because foster care adoptions, adopting kids right out of the foster care system, costs you virtually nothing. The state pays for all of that. So that's my only, you know, people say, well, I'd love to adopt, but I can't afford it. Well, yes, you can. There's lots of kids sitting in the foster care system all across the United States that are virtually free to adopt. So check that out. See, was adoption something you always discussed when dating or before marriage?
No. I can't recall while we were dating.
I always wanted to.
I know you wanted to, and we've, you know, that's
Were we
since
serious
been revealed.
about it, though, when we were dating? Not
right.
Really.
I mean, I've known you for almost 15 years now. Easily. Actually, yeah, 15 years.
I'm not old enough for you to know me that long.
Right. So, anyways, I knew that I wanted to marry you, obviously, the first time I saw you, but you're so silly. Anyways, when we started discussing how we wanted to raise a family, I knew it was something that you definitely wanted to do. You know, I didn't grow up dreaming about adopting. I'll just be
that's okay. You need to be honest. Yeah.
But you learn.
You weren't fantasizing about it.
Right. So with that though, exploring it first and foremost, and seeing kind of what it looks like in the dynamic of your family and how it's going to work out. That was my first step, and it was something that grew from it. You know.
Yeah. And now you feel like now you would definitely encourage people to adopt?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And well, you look at me like...
No!
What was that?
I'll ask
yes,
you
I would definitely encourage families and primarily husbands to adopt. I mean, there's multiple rewards around having children biologically, right? Mm-hmm. But the first time I saw you...
Totally natural to want that.
Coming down the escalator holding Noah, I can't recreate that feeling. Yeah. And this was after we've had biological children before. So to experience something like that, it's really difficult to put into words, but the rewards far outweigh the cost.
My husband was never one for adoption, not against it, but not necessarily wanting to, but lately his heart's been shifted towards it. We have 3 boys of our own and considered adopting a little girl rather than having a 4th naturally. I think the biggest worry for him is the financial burden, which we've already talked about. I know he doesn't waver with the, will I love her the same, but I do think nurturing comes so naturally to women that the rewarding insight and sheer deep love from a husband's perspective will be great to hear, along with the financial piece about it. Can't wait to hear this video. So basically, what people ask a lot, and they ask me this, and I know they ask you this, is do you love your adopted children the same as you do your biological children?
Yes, absolutely. I think, so it's definitely a thought that crosses your mind, right? Is you're bringing home a child that you didn't give birth to, and how are you going to feel about that? Those of you that already have children and you're considering adopting and adding to your family, don't let that be the hiccup and derail you. All right, because the minute you lay eyes on that child, regardless of age, and you bring them home, it's going to be like they've been a part of your family the whole time, and it was meant to be. If you don't have any children and this is going to be maybe your first child is going to be adopting, you haven't really experienced parenthood at that point, and I can't really look at it through that lens. But at the same time, going through it, you're not going to skip a beat. I mean, seriously.
But don't you also think that it's fair to say though that it's okay if it takes you more time to fall in love with the child? Because I think, and I'm not trying to like jump in on your answering your questions here, but I think that like as women, when we're pregnant, we fall in love with this baby like when it's in our womb, and for men, it's like a concept. It's in there, it's in there.
You go through the same thing when you had
right, but when the baby is born and they're tangibly there, then that's when the husband like really falls in love with the baby. It's very rare for a husband to be like super in love with the baby when you're actually pregnant with it. There are some men like that, but most men are kind of disconnected a little bit in that way. And I think it's the same thing with adoption. You see this picture, and as moms, we fall in love from the moment we see the photo. We're like, this is our baby, and we will just scratch and claw to get to them. Where dads are kind of like, okay, that's a cute kid. But then when the kid comes home and you get to know them and their personality, and you start to get to play with them and all that stuff, it happens. I think it happens then for dads.
It becomes more natural at that point.
Right.
It's not. You're not looking at something on paper and saying, "Oh, okay, here's
my kid,"
or the project we're working on right now, or whatever you want to put it. But yeah.
And as women, we do that. We're like, look at this little picture. This is my baby. And men just are not quite the same way. And that's okay. That's okay. I just don't want to paint a picture of like it has to be instantaneous, and if it's not, then there's something wrong.
With most things, it's going to take time.
Right. It takes time to foster that relationship.
Okay. We've got Rosie taking a nap right now. You guys have been home a couple weeks, and I love her. I will do anything for her, but at the same time, we're still working on the relationship.
Right.
That
you guys are still bonding,
and it does.
Bonding takes time. Yeah. It's like an arranged marriage. It's like, here you go. Yeah, you're in love with each other.
The three I had already.
Your other wives, they didn't work out.
Your sister wives.
I would like a sister wife. I would like one. would be very, very helpful to me.
Do I get to pick?
You don't get to pick the sister wife. I get to pick the sister wife. She gonna be ugly. She gonna be real ugly. But she'd be really good at cooking and cleaning. I'll lean on you, Forrest, and you lean on me, and then our heads won't get wet. Okay. Alright, so now we have hopped over to YouTube, and my sweet friend Shaylee says, did you feel hesitant that you would love your adopted babies less than your biological children? Did you feel hesitant? Answer. I mean, we can answer these questions.
Yes, the question crosses your mind. You wonder, how will I feel about this child? So yes.
And we've already discussed what actually happens. You have your first child and you're pregnant with your second. You do the same thing. You're like, can I love this child as much as I love my first child? So you don't know what you don't know. You know? Okay. Are you surprised by the feelings you both felt after adopting?
100%. And I don't know if surprise is the right word. I was refreshed. You know, seeing Noah and Angie come down the escalator at the airport. Same thing with Rosie when you guys got home, or when Jonah came home for the first time. It's like a feeling you can't describe. It's just like the birth of Kennedy and Shelby, right?
How do you figure out what children to adopt since there are so many who need homes?
Oh, that's a really good question. We didn't really have a wish list, I guess is the way to put it. I think let them find us.
We went where God led us with our first adoption. We wanted to go where there was a great need, and that led us to Africa, which then led us to the Congo. Yeah, I mean, God's just led us down each path. Noah's adoption in Africa, then we wanted to do an infant domestic adoption, and so that's what we did to adopt Jonah. And then we really weren't even planning on, y'all know, we weren't even planning on adopting really again. It was just kind of a topic that occasionally came up, but then quickly got shot down. And then Rosie kind of fell into our lap. So there was no like methodical plan or Excel spreadsheet we used to figure out which child to adopt. It was just God's leading, following God's leading. Questions for your husband. How do you respond to any negative comments regarding your decision to adopt?
Ooh, another good one. Drives you crazy too. This drives you crazy. We've had this talk before too, because there's two ways to look at it. One is you can ignore it, which the maybe couple of experiences I've had with this, I've tried to take that approach, but there's sometimes where you kind of flip it on them and use it as an educational tool at the same time, and thinking through how I want my boys to behave, or Rosie, for instance, 5, 10, 15 years down the road. It's my responsibility to set the example. So trying to take something that people have their views and their opinions on things, and to have an educated discussion around it, it has a purpose as well, I think.
Yeah. So just use it as an opportunity to educate. What is the hardest part about adoption?
What's the hardest part? There are several highs, there are several lows. There are several reasons to get excited, right? When you reach a certain milestone, my wife will go bananas. All right.
And then when things don't happen.
And when things don't happen like they're supposed to, because there's a lot of things that you cannot control, it is like the end of the world, which I understand, right?
I'm so emotional.
Important milestones. So maintaining an even keel is something that I...
Basically, he's just letting you know your wife is going to turn into a crazy person with ups and downs and highs and lows, and sometimes you're going to come home and she's going to be running around the house excited, and other times you're going to come home and she's going to be in her pajamas in the bed with the sheets pulled over her head crying.
Don't take it personally if she gets mad at you guys when you're not as excited as her, or don't take it personally when she gets upset with you when you are not as low or upset as she is. All right, do your best to stay calm, cool, collective. I think it's an important role that spouses play in the process.
He's trying to tell you to
we balance each other out pretty well.
Put on your white gloves before you touch her. Okay, what piece of advice would you give to someone who is trying to adopt?
Open mind. I think there's an earlier question around, how did you choose your children? Yeah. And I think, we
be prepared for anything, because nothing has happened how we thought it would.
Expect the unexpected. As I alluded to earlier, there's a lot of elements that you can't control, and the ability to navigate through those tough times and come out on the other end, knowing that you're going to come out on the other end, it reinstills faith. And I think it's something that throughout the whole process you learn, you grow.
How has your relationship with your wife changed during the adoption process?
That is another really good question.
You now know the full extent of my
I now know what I got myself into. So there's elements that I didn't know about my wife, I guess, that as you kind of go through this process together, I've seen things in her that I'm more attracted to. I mean, as a mother, I think you have a ton of passion for what you do, and I knew you were going to be a great mom already, but to see you fly around the world and bring home 2 of our children, I mean, that's pretty hot. But with that said, anyways, I think our relationship has grown stronger. We've learned a lot about each other. You know, I hope that you've seen certain elements of me being a father.
Yeah.
That
There's nothing hotter than seeing, you know, your husband pick up a child that it doesn't look like him, doesn't look like me. You know, when I see him pick up Rosie and play with her and love her, there's nothing more attractive than that for me as a wife, like seeing him play with our kids and stuff and love them and truly like be willing to take care of them. You know, some men out there don't take care of the kids that they spawned. And so to have a man who's willing to open his heart and his home and his finances and everything else, he works hard every day for the money that we've spent on these adoptions. It's an attractive thing. You're hesitant just because we have 3 birth children and already have to deal with jealousy between our 4-year-old and 2-year-old. Anything your husband can share with what he's felt or gone through for my husband to watch is much appreciated.
Making it a point, and this is very important because you need to understand that your newly adopted child needs a lot of attention.
Right.
And you need to have that bonding period. You need to have that relationship established, but at the same time being cognizant that you're not neglecting the kids you already have. The more inclusive you can be of everybody.
Making everybody feel
right,
loved. And
right. The more you can get them to play together or collaborate in whatever fashion, I think art project, things like that. It's really, really important because the sooner that they can form a relationship, it makes it easier on us as parents. I think they don't ever feel like you're choosing one or the other.
So she has 2 questions. Okay, these are good questions. How will you expose your black children and Asian children to other black and Asian people so they don't always feel like they live in a racial minority? In other words, how can you help them feel connected to their racial community?
Very, very, very important element here. And we're getting to the point now where they're
starting,
age
at
and
this
they're starting
up to this point, our boys haven't really taken too much notice of the fact that they look different than we do. Even though we talk about it, obviously nothing is hidden in our house. Sure. Adoption is something we talk about, we're very open about, but it hasn't really been an issue, if that makes any sense, for our kids. Up until now, our oldest is now beginning to realize that he has different skin than we do and all of that.
So to answer your question, me personally, I have mentors that are men who are black, and I have discussions with them all the time about, you know, how do you address certain things with your sons or your daughter, because those are experiences that I didn't go through growing up that men that I respect.
You don't know what it's like to be a teenage black boy.
But I also understand that it is different, and I think that's the first element, is that not being ignorant to the fact that your family's a little bit different, and growing up as a young black man is going to be different than what I can provide you.
So good, strong role models, which we look
churches,
for within our church, within our community. We have great our neighbors. Our neighbors next door are wonderful. African American family. They have 6 children, and actually all of their children have been adopted out of the foster care system. So it's been really, really awesome to have that right next door to us, that kind of community and connection. Just making sure that we're super respectful of our children's heritages and where they come from. I don't want our kids to forget where they came from. Right. We celebrate our differences.
We're going to raise them as Braniffs.
Yeah.
However, at the same time, we're going to, just like you put it, we're going to celebrate the different heritages.
We talk about the Congo, we talk about China.
So
yeah.
That's a really good question.
Celebrating the different holidays and stuff that they would have celebrated in their countries that they're from, that kind of thing. Do you think it's important to give your children opportunities to be with people of their own race and learn their ethnic cultures, racial, national history? This is a personal question for me because I am Middle Eastern descent. My dad is from Gaza, Palestine, and I grew up in a very white neighborhood in America. I wish my parents lived in a more racially diverse area so I could be around those that looked Arab like me. Yeah, I think we've talked about that before. We live in a diverse community. That's something that we look for and is important to us. As a matter of fact, there's certain places we've looked at moving before and decided not to move there because it was too white. It sounds really bad, but it was too white, and we don't want our kids to be singled out in that way. So, my friend Barbara asks, what about adoption was the most nerve-wracking for you, or what scared you the most about it at first?
So I think the original hesitancy is around the finances, but the thing that scared me the most was when Angie had to go to the Congo to pick up Noah. She was in country for a month, 5 weeks, something like that. No dramatic finish or anything.
That was it. Sorry.
Well, thank you for having me on your channel.
Thank you for coming in and guest starring. I did want to add one more thing super quickly here at the end, is that the ladies who reach out to me and say, you know, that they really want to adopt, but that their husband is just not on board, or that he's kind of like, I would say my number one piece of advice to you is to pray. Pray for your husband. Pray and ask God to change your husband's heart. Because that is really, you can't force them into anything. If you do that, there's going to be resentment, there's going to be issues there. So you don't want to force your husband into something that he may not be comfortable with. But what I would say is just, again, is pray, do some research, share information with your husband. Don't nag them. But
This is the best way to put it. So, I don't like being told what to do. I'll just be candid. I'm not a huge fan of it. But my wife has an amazing ability to make me think that something was my idea, and it was really yours a lot of the time. So
we're not advocating tricking your spouse.
No,
I'm trying to say
I needed to want to do it.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you know, when you approached me about Rosie, what was my response?
Let me think about it.
Let me think about it. And that's okay to think about it, but do what you say you're going to do. All right, because your wives
are waiting.
They're waiting, and they have every single rebuttal or response to every hesitation you might have already in their brains. All right. With that said, you know, take your time and think it through. It is something that's it's an important decision if you guys commit to it. And if you need more time, that's okay as well. And I think that's important for husbands to understand, is you don't want to feel rushed into something.
Thank you guys so much for watching. I think we were able to get to all the questions that you asked. I hope that we did. If you have any other questions, you can leave them in the comments, and I'll make sure that he sees them and can try to answer them in the comments for you if you have any more for him. But yeah, that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Bye.